Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
Hi guys! Cześć, tu Asia Domagała, Twój kompas w świecie nauki języka angielskiego, a ta audycja ma pomóc Ci w rozwoju Twojego angielskiego oraz umiejętności słuchania ze zrozumieniem. Przy okazji poznasz także ciekawe informacje nie tylko ze świata językowego. Odcinki przeznaczone są dla osób od poziomu B1 w górę i są w 100% po angielsku. Let's go! This is episode number 1 of my English Compass podcast, and it's going to be about workation and its ups and downs. So let me start with the differences between certain important terms. So let's start with the terminology related to workation. There are 4 major words or expressions that you might need to know and differentiate when it comes to this topic. It's remote work, workation, digital nomad, and expats. So let's start with remote work. So remote work is just working outside the traditional office setting, often from home or other locations. It's typically associated with fixed employment and with employees adhering to company policies and schedules. So it's simply about not working from a traditional office. The second term is workation. And workation, something I did in the beginning of 2024, is a blend of work and vacation, where people work remotely while enjoying leisure activities. It's usually a short-term arrangement in a different, often very scenic location. Now, mind you, 2 things when it comes to workation. Vacation is actually American English word. In the United Kingdom, you may quite more often come across holidays. So workation as such is more American than British, but of course, I'm sure that every single British person understands what workation is. So workation is a combination of work and vacation, and it's usually combining those 2. So you go somewhere where you have beautiful, marvelous views outside of your window, and at the same time you simply work. Depending on needs, whether half a day or just a couple of hours a day, it's a combination of both. Now, the third term we need to know is a digital nomad. I think it's completely different from the first 2. Digital nomads, they simply embrace a location-independent lifestyle. They work remotely while traveling extensively. So it's not workation and it's not only remote work, because digital nomads, they often change locations while working. And it's quite often used by freelancers, entrepreneurs, or simply remote employees with very high work and location flexibility. And with that, I also mean the time differences that go along. And digital nomads are people who, for example, for 3 months they work from Spain, then they move to Portugal, and then they move to Iceland, or they move to the United States. So they simply work wherever they are, not necessarily always scenic locations. The last, 4th term that I would like you to know is expat. And expat is simply an individual who lives and works in a foreign country, typically on a long-term or permanent basis. And it's usually employment tied to a specific location and company in the host country. So let's say that there is a company in the United Arab Emirates and they ask you to come because you're a highly qualified specialist. And you sign a contract with that company for 2 years. So you make an obligation, you promise to work for them for at least 2 years until the contract is over, and that makes you an expat because you work and live in a foreign country on a long-term or permanent basis. Now, knowing those 4 concepts, those 4 terms, I think it's good to say that the concept of workation as such, which is the topic of this podcast, has gained popularity in the recent years, allowing individuals to work remotely from different various holidays destinations. As you know, I have already done it myself. In the beginning of this year, I worked and had vacations or holidays, I should say, in Thailand. I would say that Bali, which was my first destination at the end of December 2023, was not proper workation because we didn't work that much. It was more like holidays because we used the opportunity of the entire world, or let's say Poland, having a longer break between Christmas and the 6th of January. So we simply had holidays. But the rest 4 weeks were definitely a workation, a proper workation. Now, people, instead of taking time off, they continue to work while enjoying a change of scenery. This is another essence of workation. And this trend emerged during the pandemic, let's face it, as remote work became feasible even from afar. And workations offer the chance to balance work and leisure, but they come with challenges. And those challenges I would like you to know as well today. But let's start with the ups of workation. So with the bright sides of working remotely from a scenic location. So first of all, of course, it's an opportunity to gain some new experiences, discovering new cultures, a totally different environment, and both can be really, truly enriching and inspiring because they also provide you with a fresh perspective for work. Second point, I would say, is increased productivity, generally speaking, because in my case, it was, let's say that it was indeed ups and downs. And when it comes to my productivity, when I was working from Thailand, generally getting the ball rolling in a relaxed setting often leads to a heightened productivity, which also makes the tasks seem a little bit lighter. I would say like a breeze. Indeed, they do. I would definitely agree. But this also showed me that when having workation, I really, really care about something that takes us to point number 3, which is work-life balance. Because even though my productivity was increased indeed, I really, really was lazy at times, and I cared more about my leisure time than my work time. And indeed, the work-life balance is a huge bright side, a huge up, a huge advantage of workation, wherever you are. Because you simply focus more on what's outside of your window rather than work. And it indeed fosters a sense of harmony in your day-to-day life. I, at least, haven't thought that much about work. Of course, we worked. When you have your own business, when you run your own company, it's simply impossible not to look at your email box at least once a day and sometimes do something with what you can see there. But both of us, me and my husband, we definitely did only the things that were a must. We postponed things that we knew did not require our immediate attention when we were there, because we preferred to go to the beach, we preferred to go on another trip, on island hopping, on snorkeling, on having another portion of a morning glory, in my case, or something yet different. We simply enjoyed the location we were in. So work-life balance is definitely there when it comes to the bright sides. Now, another point I would say is that it helps you to grow. It's a matter of personal growth for sure. Going the extra mile by challenging yourself in a new environment can lead to very substantial personal growth and development. It really helps you get out of your comfort zone and tackle whatever needs to be dealt with. And it's definitely helpful for your personal growth. And then cost effectiveness would be the last one. And because some destinations like Thailand offer a lower cost of living, making a workation an affordable option for those, especially for those who seek adventure without breaking the bank. Thailand is definitely a cost-effective option, yet I would underline at this point that 10 years ago, so when we visited Thailand for the first time, it was very cheap. Now, when you try hard, it's cheap, but it's definitely not very cheap anymore. You really need to try hard in order to find something that is cheap, but at the same time high quality. There are more and more locations, places, restaurants, hotels that are really expensive. So now it's a matter of, going the extra mile as well about finding the right places to make it an affordable option. But it's still very possible. And now let's move on to the downsides, the disadvantages, the dark sides of workation, because they also exist, and I would lie if I said they didn't. So the first one is time zone differences. Dealing with time zone differences can be indeed challenging, especially for remote teams or meetings, or definitely customers being in a different location. Now, even though for Thailand it's only, I'm saying only in inverted commas, it's only 6 hours difference. So we dealt with it pretty well in a sense that we usually woke up at 7 a.m. in the morning, in my case with alarm clock, because I'm not an early bird. For my husband, no alarm clock needed, but for me it was an alarm clock, so it always rang at 7 a.m. We had breakfast and then we headed to the beach. We spent something like 5 to 6 hours at the beach, and then we returned hotel or apartment around 1, and we started working from around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and that's mainly because 2 in the afternoon our time was 8 a.m. in Poland. For my husband it was crucial because 8 a.m. meant the beginning of work, and he runs an online shop, so the stuff that he left working in Poland alone needed his support. And for me it also meant classes, which I still have from time to time, but also other meetings and things that needed my attention. So it wasn't that bad, but it also meant that, for example, the moment we went to sleep, well, we couldn't be contacted. And for me, it also meant that I couldn't have afternoon meetings, not to mention evening meetings online or lives on Instagram or anything like that. So time zone differences can be a pain in the neck. Another point I would underline when it comes to the dark sides would be kind of an infrastructure / internet, because indeed some destinations may have unreliable internet connections or limited infrastructure, and when we were searching for hotels or flats that we wanted to rent for the time being, we always looked at how internet and general electricity was reviewed by the customers. What was the rating for internet connection? Because if, once internet is poor, then we knew that it's a no-go, because we needed a reliable internet connection. So this can be indeed somehow excluding for certain locations. We, for example, didn't go to Koh Phangan Island, which we really love. We visited the island in 2014. Yeah, 2014, so 10 years ago. And we really loved it. It's a small island, not that many tourists, at least back then. But we were afraid about electricity / internet connection, because it's always more difficult and challenging on the island. So Phuket is a huge island and it has a very advanced infrastructure, which for some can be a disadvantage as well as such. But we knew that for us it's a pretty good thing, because it allowed us to have the access to good Wi-Fi, simply. Another issue that can be a pain in the neck are basically issues related to legal requirements and visa. So navigating through visa regulations or tax implications, it can be indeed a burden, especially if you work somewhere longer. In our case, the tax implications were not the case because we didn't spend that much time abroad, but I know that for some people it is. And the visa regulations or other legal regulations can also be sometimes, time consuming and not something that, usually people are fond of. Another thing that was a, let's say, dark side of our workation, and I think it's a matter of a personal perspective, because to me, and it's really huge, I think if I was to make it a ranking of downsides, of disadvantages of workation, this would be number 1. Because I hate ants, I hate insects, and I hate any kind of bugs, small creatures just crawling on the floor or anywhere else. I hate ants. And in Thailand, quite often you you come across ants. And we once stayed in one hotel for 2 weeks, 14 days, in our apartment, because it was more of an apartment than a room. Ants were everywhere. And I was fighting them really fiercely. I did my best to eliminate them, but they always resurfaced. They always reappeared. I know it's a small thing, and I know that ants are small, and generally insects are small, but I hate them. Really, I have a lot of disdain in me for ants. And it reminds me of one thing that I found in one of the English file books when I had a B2 group, when I was teaching them. One of the topics of the unit was job interviews. And an article was about something which is called extreme interviews. And there was a question that was asked during one of those extreme interviews. And it was something like, would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? And for me, it's always one horse-sized duck. I really prefer to fight one huge opponent than 100 tiny ones. And it's the same with ants, with insects, with anything that is tiny and has more than 4 legs. But it's personal. I know that it doesn't bother everyone, but it bothers me much. So it's a huge downfall when it comes to going anywhere in Asia, probably, because, well, but honestly, in Poland you also come across insects like mosquitoes in summer, right? Or ants in your home, if you don't pay attention to some hygienic aspect or anything related, or even if you do, they may appear. So ants are everywhere, and I'm fully aware of that. But I think in Thailand, it's because of the climate and everything, it's simply more of that. But surprisingly, this time there were no mosquitoes. So no bites for me this time, because I'm always like, ready meat to be eaten by mosquitoes everywhere I am. This time, not the case, so that's lovely, but still the ants were there. So all kinds of insects are always a big, big disadvantage. Another thing that can be a dark side of Workation is in English. And English in a sense that there are places in the world where people cannot communicate English effectively. And I'm saying effectively like on purpose, because the fact that someone thinks they speak English doesn't mean that it's effective communication. And this is unfortunately the case in Thailand, because Thai as a language has very specific and peculiar intonation. Nothing like English or Polish or any language I know. And when Thais speak English, you may quite often not understand a single word, because even though they produce words that are correct, with the accent they have from Thai and intonation that they take from Thai language, it's an absolute miscommunication. And I found it really, really, maybe not devastating, but really, really exhausting after some time. If you encounter such conversations for a week, it's fine. But if you encounter such conversations after 2, 3, and 4 weeks, it's really, really tiring. So I was simply spent sometimes after talking to Thai people, not every single time, because it's not that everyone has this intonation in English, but most of them do. It was simply tiring for me, and I really, really am good at listening. I can understand a lot when people speak English, depending on their accent or intonation, where they come from, what is their mother tongue, and so on. With Thai English, it was really a tough lesson for me. It was simply a challenge. Not to mention that in some locations, people may not know English at all. So not even with their strong intonation, but generally no English. And then communication can be really tough, especially if you have to deal with a problem you have. If there is a problem you need to tackle and no one can speak English, then it can be a nightmare. And last but not least, even though spending workation in such countries as Thailand can be cost effective, because generally a lot of Asian countries are simply cheaper than European countries. For me, workation meant also losing money, because I couldn't, for example, do training sessions in person. And by the way, training as a noun in English is not countable. And if something is not countable, it means that, first of all, you cannot use it in plural. So you will never say trainings, because it's incorrect grammatically. And secondly, you cannot use a or n in front of such a word. So you can never say a training. It's always just training and no plural. So if you want to say plural, talking about training, and say training meeting, training session, and so on. That's why I said training sessions. So for me, workation always means losing the opportunity to train in person. And I train higher education staff members in most cases in intercultural communication and topics related to internationalization of higher education. I had to reject 2 offers of in-person training. I could postpone the others, but not those 2. So I lost money twice. And those training sessions could not be conducted online. You know, pandemic is long over and people are not that willing to sit in front of screens again. They prefer to meet in a classroom, and I fully support that because I also prefer to train in the classroom. But workation, as you can see, can be sometimes also costing money. So I lost money as a result. So it's not always just, beautiful and scenic, but it sometimes also means not earning money. Yeah, so that was about the disadvantages or the downs, the dark sides of workation. Well, while workation may not be suitable for everyone, I'm sure about that, it undoubtedly represents a significant evolution in how we individuals approach our professional lives. And I think as technology continues to enable remote work, because I think it will, the workation trend is, I think, likely to persist. It may also offer a unique and flexible way for individuals to redefine the traditional boundaries between work and leisure. Are we going to have another workation next year, just like we did in 2024 and 2023? I don't know. I'm not sure. We still need to consider different aspects of workation. One thing is sure, we will not go to Thailand again. So we went to Thailand in 23, we went in 24, we will not go in 25. Whether we will go somewhere else for workation or not, I can't say, because we have to discuss that among ourselves and, do a kind of a brainstorming on what is best, what we want and what we don't want. Because having spent 2 workations already abroad, we have certain conclusions. But I'm not sharing them with you yet because I think we still need to digest them on our own. So stay tuned. I'm sure I will share those thoughts with you sooner or later. Dziękuję za wysłuchanie tego odcinka. Daj koniecznie znać w komentarzu, jak Ci się podobało. Czy byłeś kiedyś podobnie na jakimś workation albo czy pracowałaś zdalnie? Czy jesteś może digital nomad? Daj mi koniecznie znać w komentarzu. Zobacz też w opisie odcinka transkrypcję do tego odcinka oraz trudniejsze słówka, które dla Ciebie przygotowałam w formie słowniczka. Dziękuję za dzisiaj i do usłyszenia w kolejnym odcinku.
Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and all carry-on baggage stowed until the aircraft is parked.